And I'll look for discussion and information, questions that you might have for city manager, and I see that the city financial director is here as well. Mr. Rodriguez.
Mayor, thank you. I think there's a lot of effort that this budget has gone in. I know every councilman has looked at this from their perspective, and a lot of questions that I've received, and probably the same questions they've received. And I'm going to ask the city manager this question, and hopefully he can articulate it so that we understand is, Chris, why is it that the county and the school district are able to lower their taxes so much, and I know the county went to the no new revenue tax, and we're here at 0.38. Can you give us an insight on that, and why are we standing at that?
It's a good question, and I know the perception in the public has that question on their mind as well. I've had that from some other folks. So the proposed rate of 38 cents is the lowest rate that we've proposed in the last 23 years. So we are sensitive to that. Now then, we do provide a lot more service than a diversity of service than the county, and so we have a different scheme of how we have to do things. One of the things that doesn't go into that no new tax rate is the computation involving new property that's developed on the tax roll for the first time. We had about $89 million worth of new things built. Some of that was commercial and some of it was residential. The county had, which netted a $312,000 gain of something that's not in the no new tax rate. And the county, for instance, brought in a little under $1 million from their new improved values. And so with that, they have an extra almost $1 million to work with, where we're dealing with $312,000. In addition to that, we just issued bonds for about $42 million. We received $47 million, but we only had to borrow 41 and some change. So because of our good credit rating, and so we need to start servicing that debt as well. And so this tax rate accounts for about $1.2 million going towards that debt service from this tax rate of 38 cents. And it leaves about $350,000 to go towards those capital projects that we're talking about. Also, what I'd like to express to the crowd, media, if you're watching, is that we're not planning any pay increases in this budget for our employees. So it's a very lean budget, and you saw some of the things. I mean, parks improvements, we're planning to buy mulch. That's it. Think about that. Not a lawnmower, not a weed eater. We might buy a weed eater out of a small line item, but the big capital items, it's just not there. So it's a very tight budget, but we do think that we're going to be able to work on a compensation plan for our employees. We've hired a consultant, an outside consultant, to do a study, and he's performed that study, and we reviewed that with the council. And to be competitive with the market and to keep and retain our employees and to recruit employees as needed, we need to make some severe adjustments. And there's no way that we can budget that in this environment. And so what we're planning to do is look at the surplus revenue that we collect at the end of the year. Our budget year ends September 30th, excuse me. And then it takes about 45 days for us to close the books on that year. And then we will see the revenue surplus that we have from different line items, like we budgeted amount for sales tax. If there's money above and beyond that, we're going to study that and see if that was due to one-time audits, or is that due to more people living in the city and the region and shopping here. And we're going to take a portion of that revenue that we see and allocate that across the pay scale to try to bring people up closer to where they need to be competitively. We plan on rolling that out in January, February as time allows. And that will encourage our employees and help them to understand we're looking at this from a big picture, and that we're also going to address those needs. Now then, if we see that we're collecting, say, like an extra $1 million in surplus revenue in this coming cycle, we'll find out how much of that is reliable for the next budget and budget towards that, not the surplus that really came in because of one-time audits or something like that. So there's other things that happen too, just like at the tourism department. We have 2 outages in a year. It creates more proper hotel tax revenue. So if you only have 1 outage or no outage, it affects that line item as well. So we've had a good year at the tourism department, and that surplus will be used hopefully to be able to understand how much is sustainable moving forward and be able to use those funds to reward those employees that are working in that area and get them to a competitive range with other cities our size and in our same similar market. So that's what we're trying to do. And I'm really encouraged. This budget was worked on for almost a year, and the department heads have worked hard to hone down their line items. If any of you are familiar with a zero-based budget, that's basically the format that we use. We start off with zero, and we make them justify every expense that we take on and document. So, yeah, 38 cents is lower than last year, about 3/4 cent. Appraised values went up. The scary part about it all is the formula is so complicated, it's hard to communicate it. I don't know if y'all realize it, but it's just this minus this. There's a worksheet that's about 9 pages long that the comptroller has to fill out just to figure out what that tax rate needs to be. And there's like 100 lines of data that have to be entered into that. But it's literally 9 pages of add this, subtract this, divide by this, and you end up with the no new tax rate. We've been very fortunate over the last 10 years to adopt what they would call a no new tax rate for 6 out of the last 10 years. And so this will be, or 7 out of the last 10 years, this will be the 4th out of 11 years that we will be above that no new revenue rate. So senior citizens, you don't see a change. Your taxes are frozen if you're living in a homestead and have filed the papers with the appraisal district. You have your taxes are frozen. Whatever we do here or whatever changes at the dais, up or down, doesn't affect y'all. So that's one way to look at it. And then also for the part that I'm saying is scary is there's a 10% cap that goes on everybody's tax bill if your tax bill is going to be more than 10% than last year. My personal one last year hit that cap, so I'll be catching up on some of those old appraisals, and I'll be capped out again at 10% again. And many of you may or may not experience that same joy, but we're going to enjoy it and know that, and I want everybody to know at this dais and in this crowd and on social media right now that our goal as a council, as a city manager, as department heads, we want to give you the best bang for your buck. When you sit down and you write out that check to pay your taxes, we want you to look at how much you're paying the city and say, wow, I got a lot of service in return for that amount. And so I want you to be able to be proud of what we're doing, and I'll leave it at that. I'll answer any other questions y'all may have. Council?
Well, thank you, Chris. I just wanted some insight, and I wanted that to be as transparent to the audience and also to the public. I know this is a tough budget cycle, and I know that I personally, and I know some of the other councilmen have reached out to you with questions, and your staff and you have answered those questions for our understanding. And I just want to say I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Council, other questions, comments before we move forward here? None? Mr. Wadley, or you reaching for the other thing? I would like to emphasize what Mr. Rodriguez says in terms of soliciting advice and help on understanding the budget. Where did this go? Where does this come from? And staff, the entire staff has been outstanding, but I would have to point out that Mr. Kaufman and our CFO, Ms. Gregory back there, what number do you want to know? We have 300 and 400 pages of numbers. What number do you want to know? Where did it come from? It's here, and it's understandable. I also want to comment a little bit on the opportunities that we have as community, not just city and county, but together as community. Because while we are beneficiaries of the tax reduction in the county, I'm thankful for that. We are also contributors to the county. We all live in the county if you're in the city. So we too are Hood County. And from that, we pay county taxes. We pay into the revenue stream that they have, not just in real estate, but also in lateral roads, the library, and sales tax. There's a half a penny that goes there. The mechanics that go into building this budget are, I'm sure, just normal for city and county, but you can take it into, a business standpoint. It's not just sales revenue. It is revenue that comes in that can only be used for this. It is revenue that only comes in these three quadrants. It is revenue that only can be used if you have less than a 0.20 tax liability rating. It's a chore, and I have to appreciate the people that do this and make this understandable and actionable, and that's the key for me here. It's a lot of work that went into it. So there's going to have to be some very specific motions here so that we can be clear and fulfill our obligations to the state and to other government entities. So, Mr. City Attorney, would you help me with this, please?
Well, the first motion should be to adopt, I'm sorry. The first motion should be to adopt ordinance number 2247, approving the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual operating budget.
And that is a recorded voice vote, right?
It is.
Okay. So I'll start with the young lady at the end.
Somebody needs
Is there a
that.
motion?
There you go.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to adopt ordinance 2247, approving the fiscal year 2022-23 annual operating budget.
I second that motion.
Mr. Wadley seconds that motion. I'll start at the end. Ms. Reiner, how say you?
Aye.
Mr. Vale?
Aye.
Mr. Wadley?
Aye.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, sir. And the mayor says aye. Passes 6-0. Second part of this motion.
Got it. Go ahead, Stephen. You got it. Just read it verbatim.
Mr. Mayor, I move to ratify the property tax increase reflecting in the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual operating budget.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Ms. Reiner seconds. I'll start at the other end. Mr. Corrigan?
Aye.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Wadley?
Aye.
Mr. Vale?
Aye.
Ms. Reiner?
Aye.
And the mayor says aye. It also passes as 6-0. So deliberations agenda item number 7.1 has passed 6-0, both sections on that. Before we, I think we can finish up 7.2 as well, correct?
That'd be good. Yes.
Okay. 7.2, consider adopting ordinance number 22-48, approving and levying a property ad valorem tax rate for the city of Granbury for fiscal year 2022-2023. Do I hear a motion?
Mayor,
Ms. Reiner?
I make a motion to adopt ordinance 2248, levying total property tax rate of 38 cents per $100 property valuation for the tax year 2022-23 for the purpose of maintenance and operation. The tax rate will be .157649, and for the for the payment of the principal and interest on the outstanding debt of the city of Granbury, the tax rate will be .222351.
Do I hear a second?
Go ahead.
Mr.
So moved.
Corrigan? Mr. Corrigan seconds. We'll do this as roll call as well. Ms. Reiner?
Aye.
See you. Mr. Vale?
Aye.
Mr. Wadley?
Aye.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Aye.
And Mr. Corrigan?
Aye.
And the mayor says aye. So it too passes at 6-0.